The next speaker, our keynote speaker is Dr. Hapanyengwi. I met him first at the University of Zimbabwe. He was my lecturer and then my supervisor for my final year project. And I actually was looking at it, I think 3 weeks ago. It was terrible. My project was a parking system for the University of Zimbabwe. I was looking at the code and I was like, did I write this? It was so bad. But, the support that he gave me, I remember there was a time, it was during holidays, and we needed to finish this project. And he said, how much do you need to come to university during holiday to finish your project? And I don't know how much I said. I came to school during holiday, and fast forward now, it's all of those lessons that he helped me through that time, and that's part of the many reasons why I invited him to speak to you guys today, to give that context around him being, he has now left University of Zimbabwe. He was the director of ICT, and now, he was an educator. He still is an educator. I think if you ever become an educator, you're going to be an educator the rest of your life. So, Dr. Hapanyengwi.
Thank you very much for having me. I've really been listening, and the first speaker, is he still here? He's gone. I was hoping to really have lunch with him, but I think I'll get his coordinates from Tongai, and then I'll take him out for lunch. It's really my pleasure to be here, and as Tongai has actually introduced, I am an educator by birth and by training. I'm still quite a bit in the education space to some extent, but I'm also in the tech development space, so to speak. So what brings me over here, I'm not sure why Tongai brought me here, but I'm with JKSO. JKSO Insights is a data analytics company, which I am a co-owner, and that is part of the reason why I'm actually also here. But the topic I was given, which when I walked in, I was looking for the screen, etc., and then I realized to put up a screen over here was a task and a half. So I've got slides. I'm a teacher by profession, so I've got slides. But what I'm going to talk about here is developing AI talent and capacity, education, training, and collaboration between stakeholders. It's a mouthful. And I'm not the responsible for this topic. Tongai is responsible for this topic. I've got a diagram which I am going to share with Tongai. In fact, I'm going to share this whole thing with Tongai because there's a diagram which is there, which probably summarizes everything I'm actually going to be talking about. And the diagram is anchored on change. Because artificial intelligence is nothing, it's just another term. It's change, right? It's just bringing in change. A few years ago, we're talking of something else. A few years from now, we're going to be talking of something else. So it's the issue of change and adapting to change as a profession, right? I listened to the tail end of yesterday's presentations, the online presentations, and if you haven't, I really encourage you to go ahead and listen to them because there were some fantastic things which were shared yesterday. One of the things which I gleaned from the person who presented yesterday was the issue that you are a freelancer today, you might be a freelancer today, you might be a startup today, but you're not going to remain a startup. Because if you remain a startup, then you remain a startup. We are expecting that you might be a freelancer today, but tomorrow you are going to realize that you need probably other freelancers to be together with, or you need to actually really develop a tech company which is bigger than you, right? That is actually a sign of growth. If you continue, yes, once upon a time I was my introvert, and this is in extrovert, introvert, and this is coder. I mean, I was one person who would actually be at the back end. I would actually be very comfortable until I discovered my voice. then now people who actually know me, they don't believe that I was actually once an introvert. But you cannot continue being that if you are going to grow, if you are going to be somebody, right? So by somebody here, I mean the magnitude of your business. So what I'm going to talk about is really the issue that the change has come. We need to adjust, we need to shift, we need to transform, we need to transition, and we need to modify. But I'm going to really make it very, very simplistic. I'm going to look at the source of skill which you actually need in your startup, in your freelance, in your small company. And I'm going to concentrate on three, two of them which are actually going to show you that I'm an educator. Your skill set, you as an individual, that need to develop your skill set. And then what I'm calling skill set for the future. If you have got a startup now, and next year, 2 years from now, 5 years from now, you need to actually be looking at the skill set of the kids who are in university right now. Skill set of the kids who are in primary school right now. And it should be your concern. It should really be your significant concern. You know, the major reason why Microsoft and Google and all those come to Africa is because of the minerals and everything which is in Africa, right? But part of the reason is because they realize that their future depends significantly on growing the skill set which is in Africa for their selfish consumption. Of course, they are into business. They have to actually do it. Otherwise, you are not into business if you don't have a streak of selfishness. So the skill set for the future, we need to actually really talk about that. And I'm going to probably zero in on that far much more than the other skill sets. And then the third one, which is the third skill set, is collaboration. It's collaboration. And I think that has been touched on quite a bit. But I'm just going to glean through that also, right? So I want to look at the skill set for the future. And I'm going to, I'm not going to ask a question, but I'll pose a question to you which I don't expect an answer, as to how many people realize the significance from an ICT point of view, from a computer science point of view, of the new curriculum at primary and secondary education. I said I'm going to ask you a question, and then because it has to bother you how they are actually being educated at primary and secondary, because these are going to be your employees if you grow from where you are right now to where you should, and you should actually be participating in that space. There are not people probably who are old, but some of you are old enough to be knowing what color means. What does color mean? Anyone? It's not the color of your skin. It's something to do with the projects which are being done by the students at primary school level right now and secondary school level. And that should actually go ahead and be of concern to us. Right. I am, if you look at junior school curriculum in Zimbabwe, the one which was introduced by when Dr. Dokora was the minister, it's probably one of the most significant curriculums which could actually go ahead and save your company, right? One of the subjects which is actually in there, besides languages, mathematics, heritage, and social studies, it's a fantastic subject. You have to be contextual. Science and technology, agriculture, visual and performing arts, family, religion, and moral education, physical education, sport, and mass displays. And then the last one is information communication technology, right? And that's significant, particularly as it interacts with heritage. There's a lot of interesting things which we can actually do out of our heritage in as far as our solutions are actually concerned. Because if you try to be, sorry, when I talk about heritage, I typically become really indigenous. That's why I was going to Shona on Ndebele. If you try to be American, you will not succeed. You will not succeed because you are not an American, no matter how hard you try. Right? There might be some Americans here born in America, but still you have got this indigenous thing which is actually in you. And if you try to actually be natural, Yeah, I'm not dictating the hairstyle of my wife because I'll be thrown out of the house. But if you try to be natural, at times it actually works far much better. And I mean, if your heritage is actually quite significant, and even in your company, if your heritage is exuded in there, you can actually go ahead and get a very, very competitive advantage. But you have to know your heritage, of course, for it to actually be exuded in there. But anyway, let's talk about the junior school. So ICT is a significant part of this whole thing here. Right, there is a statistic which I want to share with you as to when do people start programming, right? As to when do people start programming. But like almost anything, these are American statistics, because in Zimbabwe, we don't have statistics in Zimbabwe, or at least in the public space, right? Younger than 10 years, 8.9% of the programmers. 10 to 11 years, 10%. 12 to 13 years, 16%. 19%, 13%, 14%. So the majority of the young people start programming between the years of 19 years and below, right? The ones like me, 30 years and older, ones like most of us, is 1.7% who start programming at that specific stage. Why is this statistic important? One of the things which we need to move us as our techs is for our young brothers and sisters, our young kids to start programming. Because if they start programming at that specific stage, it is going to produce people who are going to be better employees for us down the road, right? Some of them are getting employed actually at very, very young age. I'm not going to reveal something which a colleague of mine is actually doing with these kids, but because I mean he might end up in trouble. But his very young kids, 11, 12, are key programmers in one of his companies because of the nature of the things they're actually doing. Because you know, I've got quite a bit of white hair. In fact, I've got lots of white hair. And it's not because I am desperate, poor, or whatever. It's because I have matured. Right? That's why I've got all this white hair. But there is one thing about it. I know what needs to be programmed, I think. But my methods are as archaic as my white hair. If you get an 11-year-old, and you get an 18-year-old, and you get a 25-year-old, and you get a 36-year-old, as you are going like that, their perception of a solution is totally different. It's totally different. If you want to feel old, if you are 26 years old, and you want to really feel that you are mature, just ask for a tech solution or an interpretation of a tech solution from a 13-year-old. You actually realize that, right? But it's really tapping that those different generations. Where I am in the organization I'm associated with, we have got 3 generations within that organization, with me being the older generation. Then there is one who is middle, and then there's a couple of guys who are recent graduates. And yes, I know that when we are actually finding a solution, it depends on what we are actually looking for. If we are looking at the strategies, how to fund it, etc., 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 yeah, then we probably come to the older generation, because eventually they can always say, Mdara, pull it out from your pocket, and then we can actually go ahead and fund it, right? But if we are actually looking at things which appeal, depending again on the customer we are dealing with, we actually go to the correct generation for you to go ahead and get the correct solution. This is why we are saying it's important for us in here to be interested in the ability to program, ability to problem solve of the primary school, of the secondary school, because there's actually a very, very big difference. You know, when I hear about these innovation hubs, I know a lot of things can be done better. But when I hear of all these innovation hubs, I always say people like us should really be licking their chops because of the opportunities which you can actually go ahead and get, let's say, from an innovation hub. I know there is a lot of politics around it. I come from the Ministry of Higher and Tertiary Education. I know there's a lot of politics at times around accessing those skill sets, but we need to actually go ahead and be interested. What is the advantage of early coding, early programming? In fact, there are 7 advantages for kids to actually be taught how to code early. First one, coding boosts problem-solving skills. Right? I've got, at our household, we have got my son, my daughter, and then my son, Chifaza Baba. Right? We've got my son, who is actually very, very young. Our kid knows me very well. Maybe he hasn't even met our very, very young son. When we do Legos at our house, right? These Lego solutions. His Lego solutions are totally different from my Lego solutions, right? When I do solutions on Legos, you know Legos, right? Those building blocks, right? We are Lego people, kind of. I follow instructions, right? I follow instructions. He builds. I get what I'm saying? He builds, and his perspective. I don't know if you guys have done crossword puzzles, etc., 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 etc. Whenever I did crossword puzzles, I always started from the corners. He starts from the middle, because he says that is the center of the picture, right? So I mean, the perspective is actually totally different. But early coding, problem-solving skills sorted out. Coding improves computational thinking. It improves computational thinking. For all those who have been blessed with coding here, you know what happens? Even when you're at lunch, right? You are coding, right? And don't go on a date when you have got a coding problem, right? You shouldn't go on a date, because all of a sudden, when she thinks you are about to throw the word, you go Eureka, and then she thinks what kind of shock. Yet you are saying Eureka for the code which you have actually been calculating in your head. But it really improves computational thinking. Coding encourage persistence. All right? Coding teaches creativity. Teaches a lot of creativity, right? Because I mean, you try something else and then it doesn't work. You try something else, it doesn't work. You look at your old code like Tongai. You realize that you were not even persistent at that time, right? Coding teaches creativity. Coding teaches digital literacy. Coding is a career-building skill, right? And then coding improves confidence and communication skills, right? So what we are saying here is we need to be in that specific space. I don't care how you are going to be in it for you to actually encourage. You could actually go in as a startup or whatever level you are actually in, to go into probably part of your social responsibility, to go to schools for you to go ahead and encourage them to do the coding. Be the coding champion over there, right? As part of your social responsibility. But then realizing that, but then if you are also now more business minded, it's actually really investing to actually see how you can actually invest in projects which can actually be done at the different levels as you are encouraging coding to actually be at that specific level. Right, I also have got a fantastic graphic here. Software developer employment growth, projected change in employment 2018 to 2028, right? Software developers and applications, 26% growth expected. Software developers, 21%. Computer occupations, 12%. Software developers with systems in system software, 10%. And total for all other occupations, there is actually an expected 5%. Whereas if you are looking at software development related, you are actually talking of 10%, 12%, 21%, 26%, depending on the category. What we are basically saying is the future is now, right? The future, we are in a good space. as long as we actually go ahead and utilize it properly, right? On the, our education system is split into the primary and secondary education and what is called MOPSI, and then the higher and tertiary education, which is the universities, the colleges, etc., etc. In the universities and colleges, there is this new thing which is called Education 5.0, right? Education 5.0, because there used to be Education 3.0, where Education 3.0 was looking at teaching or learning, if you want, so teaching, research, and community service, right, or consultants. And then now there's Education 5.0, which is looking at teaching, research, community service or consultancy, and then the fourth one is innovation, and the fifth one is industrialization. That's why you're actually realizing that at all these universities, there are all these innovation hubs. Why is it relevant to us? A typical innovation hub, if it is functioning properly, it has to be having industrialists involved in it. Because it cannot be an innovation hub which just belongs to the University of HIT, or to the University of CAT, or to the University of MSU, or whatever it is, or to the College of Harare Polytechnic, right? It has to actually be having the in-looking, which is looking at the academics, etc., but it has to having the out-looking, which is actually looking at all of us here, right? Because we are the industry, because in Zimbabwe, if I am looking at you, I am looking at the core of the industry. Because Delta 2% of the country. Zimbabwe is industrialized. When? Right? You are the people who are actually industrialized. So there is a need for us to actually understand that specific ecosystem. Why am I saying that? These are places where you can get, if there are 21-year-olds and 18-year-olds there, and you are now a 25-year-old, whatever in a different bracket, in as far as your thought process is concerned. So some of the solutions, some of the interactions can actually be gotten through there by doing it in an organized manner, of course. By doing it in an organized manner. And I think for now, the innovation hubs are desperate enough. It's not going to be an issue where you are supposed to be bringing in the money. Yeah, part of it, money is always actually important, but it's also some of the ideas which can actually then go ahead and be developed through the innovation, the various innovation hubs. So that education 5.0 to me is actually really tailored for us to go ahead and take advantage of. And yes, part of it, I know innovation hubs, we have got our hubs, our ICT hubs, which within our industries. And you'll actually find that at the innovation hubs, part of it is also trying to imitate the hubs which we actually have within our industry, right? But then, hey, when there is enough space, people can actually go ahead and be able to share that specific space. But we need to actually really go ahead and take advantage of that. So, what are we saying? We are saying we need to really affect or take advantage of what is happening at primary and secondary. Encourage it. In this case, especially depending on your size, you can actually go ahead and probably be the mentor, the people who are actually going to ensure that coding is actually done and coding is actually done properly. But with a forward thinking, one of the things which the first gentleman, how can I forget him? It was the gentleman who was here at the beginning. Yeah, one of the things which to me, Mr. Mapondera, which he actually mentioned, for me, at least what I had, is planning, is future planning, is not thinking about lunch, right? Think about what you are going to be eating next year. Think about what vazukuru vako are going to be eating, right? And the moment we actually do that, that planning, because I mean, if we are planning for now, my Chinese at the moment are the ones who are really dominating. So we cannot plan just for now, because right now, they are actually dominating us, and we're letting them dominate us. But if we plan for 10 years from now, we can now put structures which can actually go ahead and beat our competitors. right? That's why I'm actually talking about why it is relevant for you and I to really be involved in this education, of the education of the primary school kids, the secondary school kids, and the university and college kids, and also to be interested in what they are actually being taught. One of the things which is happening in universities at the moment, and it's a very big debate. Now I'm talking about the other place where I am, or rather the place I am employed between 8 and 5, is the issue of whether artificial intelligence should be part of every curriculum, right? Not for computer scientists, not for engineers, but for anyone who goes to a university or anyone who goes to a college, they need to actually have artificial intelligence. And I mean, if you ask me, I'll say it's obvious, right? Why? Because you are realizing that artificial intelligence, there was the autonomous vehicle which was spoken about here. And if the autonomous vehicle is an accident, what does that mean? Who is actually liable? The IT person will be far from it the moment there is actually the accident, right? It's the lawyers who are actually talking about that. It's the social workers who are actually talking about that. It's the real people who are talking about that. It's no longer the backroom guys who all of us, most of us are actually, right? So you're actually realizing that because of the way artificial intelligence is coming in, it's really affecting life as it is. I think it's Samsung. Samsung has just said, hold on, no ChatGPT and all its variants on their systems, right? For their employers, not for their phones. For your phone, you can do whatever you want, right? Why? It's because they've realized that when you are interacting with ChatGPT, it's a give and take. But in the end, ChatGPT is taking more from you, right? Because if you have interacted with it, and if you haven't interacted with it, you ask an initial question, right? And then you go ahead and refine the question, and then you refine the question, and in the process, as you are refining the question, you are giving it information, right? Especially if you have been asking smart questions, right? You are giving it information, you're progressively giving it information. So if you are using ChatGPT for the purposes of your organization, and if you are an organization of relevance, right? Progressively you are giving it your company trade secrets. For you to be able to go ahead and get the relevant information, you have to give it additional information which makes it be able to respond to you intelligently. Right? So what are we saying here? What we are saying, this artificial intelligence space, obviously the people who actually realized that might have been, yes, the engineers who realized what is actually going on here, but the people who actually put in a stop to this whole thing are the strategists within the organization. And the more the strategists understand that this is what is happening, that's when they can actually now put in new regulations to say, no. Let's go ahead and build our own, like Samsung can afford to build its own ChatGPT. Or to say, if you are interacting with ChatGPT now, here are the parameters which you actually need to go ahead and utilize. So the issue of artificial intelligence being part and parcel of all our curriculum, right? The curriculum within our institutions. That is something which, I know University of Johannesburg, for instance, just next door, University of Johannesburg, now artificial intelligence is part and parcel of everyone's curriculum, who is actually doing undergraduate at University of Johannesburg. And as it should be, because if you really look at the variations of, I know you guys, definition of artificial intelligence and all those things, I'm not going to go into those, but all the 14 or 15 different areas of artificial intelligence, you actually go ahead and realize that everyone really needs to have an understanding of this whole thing. Right. The last thing I want to talk about, I know we are short of time. In fact, I am a tickler for time. I was here on time. Is the need for collaboration. Let's actually look at the need for collaboration. So I'm actually looking at these three things. the issue of the ICT people, right? The scholars at our primary and secondary being one stream of our skill set, and then the second one being ourselves, but I'll actually probably just talk about that in a second. And then the last part being the collaborators, right? Collaboration is a very important thing, but it also has to be contextual, right? Because you realize that with the skill set which you have, you can only go ahead and get specific jobs, specific gigs, right? But the moment the gig is actually expanded, you will realize that you will need to collaborate with somebody, right? So building those collaborations is very, very key in the sense that you need to collaborate with people and realize that their reputation becomes your reputation. So when you collaborate, investigate the person whom you want to actually go ahead and collaborate with, right? Right? Get people who can investigate for you, right? So you know that if you are a tax-paying company and you are actually up to date with your Zimbra, you are up to date with it, and then you collaborate with someone who has never paid any taxes before, right? There is a problem. Because the moment you actually do that, automatically you've got that specific paint actually in you, right? So we're not only talking in terms of the skill set. Yes, determine the skill set which you require so that you actually go ahead and collaborate with the correct person. But also look at the other things which actually make up that specific organization. Because I remember that the moment you actually start collaborating, typically it can actually be a collaboration forever, in the sense that the moment you're actually going into a specific space of jobs where you do not have enough skill set, but you have actually brought in somebody else and you have gotten into that specific space, it means if you are doing well, you are going to continue in that specific space. So we need to actually go ahead and do our research as to whom we are actually collaborating with. Again, when the slides are actually shared, you are going to see another beautiful diagram which actually tells you that what is key here is what the stakeholders are actually requiring from us before we actually go ahead and then build the collaboration, and then the result is actually gotten at the end. But let me just quickly talk about ourselves, our skill set. When I started programming, you can probably start telling my age by what I'm going to talk about here. But my age is not a secret. I'm not a woman. My first language was Fortran, right? I did Fortran, and it was not even Fortran 77. Original Fortran. Right now, I code every once in a while, but I don't code in Fortran. I think the last one I was coding with is Java, right? And then the last one I really coded with was in Java, but now I'm actually doing it in Python because of the space I'm actually in. What am I saying? What I am saying is you need to obviously continue refreshing yourself. Continue looking at the space which you are actually in. I was talking to a colleague, our company right now. We are about to get a very exciting deal with some Australian, whatever, right? Because someone told me I was a good teacher 20 years ago. So when he grew, he looked for me. He said, there's only one Zimbabwean he trusts, and it's me. So anyway, we're about to get that. But for us to get into that specific space, he has told us of a very strange language, because the organization he works for, they are part of the organizations who do the coding for motor vehicles, such a black box to motor vehicle, right? So there's a lot of IBM proprietary software which is actually used in there. So we have actually just been told that if you want the gig, go ahead and learn. I'm not even remembering the name of the language because it's so unique. But the bottom line, when we started discussing on Monday, by Tuesday, people at the office had started learning that specific language. Right? Because, I mean, we are realizing that the Australian dollar might come here. We are really keeping our fingers crossed, etc., etc. But what we are saying here is, you need to continue refreshing your skill set. That is one thing which you should never, ever have usimbi. Right? You need to continue refreshing your skill set. What you knew yesterday was for yesterday. It was fantastic. It made you money yesterday. But you need to really go ahead and look at and the options are too many. This is where the thing is. So you need, obviously, like right now, as I was actually saying, that we are really going to do it because of that specific opportunity which is actually there. But if someone had actually come 2 weeks ago and said, learn this specific language, I would have said, for what? Right? But we are actually looking at the opportunity which is actually there, and we are actually then directing resources in that specific direction. But in the process, as we were talking to this specific guy, this is why I started with the issue of let's have influence on the learners. In the process, because of the little influence I have in the education sector, we are going to try and see if this environment we are talking about can be introduced at least at some innovation hub. Are you getting the maths there? Or the arithmetic? Because we are saying we as a company, we are actually growing, but we are a responsible company enough to always be looking at what is happening at secondary, at primary, and at university and at college level. Right? So we can, because of that, we can go ahead and influence an innovation hub at HIT or at CUT to say, there is this environment which is actually interesting. Let's actually go ahead and have a look at it, right? But in the processing, knowing that, if our organization grows in that specific relationship, we've got backup, right? Because I mean it's abusing your space properly. This is why we are actually saying that whole ecosystem, you need to actually be aware of it, that when we are talking in terms of skills, we are talking in terms of your skills, you are talking in terms of your collaborator skills, and then we are talking in terms of the future skills, which are the skills which are at the primary, secondary, and universities. I think I had a nice quote at the end over there, but let me see if it's still a nice quote, and then I'll sit down. Because I had a lot of things here. And the brother who was sitting over there, you are protected, because